Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And I'm joined today by Drew. Drew, can you please share a little bit about yourself? Tell us about what you do.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Drew Fesler. I'm the Chief People Officer of a company called RB Global. RB Global is the world's largest online and offline marketplace for industrial and automotive salvage equipment and assets. We're in 26 different countries. We've got 8,000 employees. We have a very large and distributed workforce. I think one of the things that is top of mind for us as we move into 2025 is figuring out what in the world do we do around our workplace arrangements,
Mm,
especially considering that we have a very distributed workforce and we have multiple different types of work environments. So I'm glad to join you, Dr. Gleb.
excellent. So let's talk about the multiple environments. Tell me a little bit more about who works where and how.
Sure. Yeah, I think in percentages, about probably 75% of our employees work on site every day in one of our local locations. Those local locations are either called branches or yards. They're essentially the same thing. It's where our assets are brought by sellers and picked up by buyers. We have probably in the order of magnitude globally probably 500 to 600 of those locations
Mhm.
worldwide. And so most of our employees are what I would say office bound largely because of the work
Mhm.
that they perform every day. We have a number of corporate sites that have different approaches around office environments and
Mm.
time in the office, largely driven to the type of work that they do and the type of teaming that's required.
Mm.
However, I think through COVID, and exiting that pandemic, our corporate sites or more administrative sites have moved much more towards hybrid or remote work.
Mhm.
And we haven't had a full return to office environment
Mhm.
in those particular locations. Even through COVID, though, our local sites, the branches and the yards that we operate, they were on site because they were
Sure.
deemed to be a critical and vital part of the economy.
Mhm.
And so we have a little bit of this mix and dichotomy of two
Mhm.
worlds. And that's one of the things that we're trying to get our arms
Mm.
around is figuring out what's the right strategy considering the different environments we're in and some of the varying different work environments that we need to offer for our employees.
That makes a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit more about the benefits that you're seeing, let's say the three top benefits from offering flexibility to at least your corporate employees. Totally understand why your in-person employees need to be in the yards, but the employees who are the corporate employees, what are you seeing as the benefits that you're offering them?
Yeah, and there's nothing revolutionary about the benefits that I'm probably going to
Mhm.
say. They're pretty well documented and well publicized. People appreciate the flexibility, they
Mhm.
appreciate the lack of commute, they appreciate the ability to work remote and be more efficient with their time.
Mhm.
All of those things are important, and to be honest, we're recognizing value and benefits from that. I think from our yard employees and branch employees, it's actually provided an unintended benefit. And what that
Mhm.
means is career pathing is really important for us as a company.
Mm.
For folks that are working in our yards and branches,
Mhm.
if they aspire to have more flexibility, more types of either a hybrid or remote arrangement,
Mhm.
to be honest, we've provided them avenues of pursuing opportunities of jobs of those types.
Mm.
And so what happens is it actually creates a job path that
Huh.
ordinarily might not have been present.
Mhm.
So it's getting people to think differently about their careers. It's trying to think differently about what type of work arrangements are important to them.
Mhm.
And then subsequently, what it's done is it's helped us to improve our attraction and retention of talent as we bring
Mhm.
folks in and then retain them.
Makes a lot of sense, and that's a good point. Yeah, I've seen. So I work with a number of companies that have done similar things of figuring out, like manufacturing companies. I haven't worked with
Sure.
a seller like you, but with manufacturing companies where some people have to be on the floor, but they have promotion paths up the corporate chain, and they aspire to those not only because they might enjoy the environment of office work more than in factory work, but also that they get more flexibility in those settings. So that definitely resonates. Tell me a little bit more about the challenges that you're experiencing.
Yeah, so I think they're really multifaceted.
Mm,
So, in one aspect, corporate culture is a challenge for us.
mm,
We've grown through acquisition. We've been a fairly steady, regular acquirer of businesses of varying different sizes.
mhm,
When we maintain a more hybrid or remote environment, there is a challenge of not having ample opportunities to come together as groups. Now,
mhm,
I'm not going to go all the way to the point where if we have kind of a potluck lunch, that's going to create culture. However,
mm,
I think with having more of a distributed workforce, the
mhm.
opportunities for us to cost effectively bring our employees together are much more limited.
Yeah.
And we have noticed that there are distinctions between virtual events, which we do,
Mhm.
versus in person events. There is something that is lost by having a more distributed workforce.
Sure.
But at the same time, we're not going to over index on that and immediately go all
Mhm,
the way to, okay, we're going to force people to come back to the
mhm,
office because we know that there's a balance there.
mhm,
I think from my perspective, though, because we have a pretty wide range of generations in our
mhm,
company in terms of where they're at in their career, we've got people just starting, people just wrapping up, and everybody in between. There are differences between kind of cohorts of
mhm,
employees as far as their tenure and seniority tends to be kind of the older population tends to want to be more something that's familiar, which is more of an
yeah.
office environment. Whereas people entering the workforce are much more used to virtual and
Mhm,
digital, and it's much more comfortable for them. So there is a little bit of, I don't want to say a collision of
mm,
generations, but certainly there's different needs for different types of people.
mm,
And so balancing those types of things is pretty difficult because we can't
yeah,
have a one size fits all model because that wouldn't necessarily meet all of the needs. But at the same time, we can't have infinite flexibility.
yeah.
So it's figuring out what that right balance is.
Mhm. Tell me a little bit more about what kind of virtual events you tried and how that worked out and versus the in-person events, which I understand there's definitely budget limitations on that.
Sure. So from a virtual event, we have regularly scheduled either company-wide town halls every quarter. We
Hmm.
have team-based events and meetings both on a quarterly or monthly schedule. We have
Hmm.
regular cadence around bringing people leaders together, which provides an avenue for a slightly different agenda than just a
Hmm.
broad communication. So those are the types of things that we've done
Okay.
on a virtual basis, on a company-wide basis. But what we've tried to do on a change management basis for projects or any type of change or transformation, we've tried to introduce a number of different types of virtual events of bringing people together. Because what we
Mhm.
found is that when we're driving change management initiatives and transformation initiatives, oftentimes people who are used to having in-person arrangements they tend to not embrace the change when it's just pushed
Mm.
out through written or kind of broad
Mhm.
communication around verbal. So, what
Sure.
we've tried to do is introduce things like office hours or
Mhm.
open houses or things of that nature to supplement and have those
Mhm.
in a repetitive form. Now, we do record those types of sessions, but we haven't found that people get the same level of value of having the
Sure.
ability to come in and ask questions in a free flowing environment. It's
Mhm.
almost like an orchestrated team meeting, per se.
Mhm.
But I think we still will have opportunities for us to try and create that in person type arrangement where it makes the most sense, as well as where the scale is appropriate. But I
Mhm.
think those additional things that we've been learning and doing in more frequency, I think we'll continue to use those as we go forward.
That makes sense. So something I'm curious if you've tried this. So you talked about like the in-person the lunch meeting. there are a number of virtual activities that can be done to help connect people. So, for example, some things I've done with other companies is a virtual coffee hour
Mhm.
where people opt in to be randomly matched with others across the company to just have virtual coffee for 30 minutes with somebody else from another department, just across the company, kind of random match. And so that I found helps build culture and helps build connections with people. So helping address that culture. That's kind of one activity that seems beneficial.
Mhm.
Another activity that seems beneficial is to do a daily sharing where everyone in a team or in a department, they share and respond to free questions daily, like how are you feeling right now? How's stuff going on in your personal life? What's one fact about yourself or the world that other people don't know? And what do you want to focus? What do you plan to focus on at work this day? And so people share and everyone can see their sharing. I don't know if you mentioned earlier that you use Microsoft Teams. So you just get a Microsoft Teams channel for a certain amount of people and they all share every day and they respond to others who share. So that creates a sense of connection through a virtual interaction. A third type of activity is to do things that are social in a virtual setting. So, for example, you mentioned a number of young people. Young people tend to like video games, and a lot of people connect through Discord, where they're playing video games with each other. Or you can do a virtual movie watching, where a number of people watch a movie together at the same time and then discuss it. So there are lots of options, and that's just three options that I named of virtual social connection to build those connections to address that culture. I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I think of those things, the what I would call random connection is one that might be pretty interesting for us to think
Hmm.
about. The other ones, I think, while interesting, I think we'll have potentially some obstacles to overcome from a cultural standpoint because
Hmm.
I think from our perspective, we tend to get down to business pretty quickly on any
Hmm.
interaction that's created, and for us to go all the way to trying to create more of kind of a social type arrangement
Hmm.
in those types of settings, I think would be a little bit more of an uphill climb. But I think it's definitely something worth considering.
Hmm.
I think coming back to the one that is of interest is more of kind of the randomizer connection
Yeah.
and trying to figure out, okay, how do you expand your views beyond kind of your team or maybe your
Hmm.
department and see the world in a different place, both team wise, department wise, geographically as well, because we are a
Hmm.
global company. I think people would benefit from that. I think one of the things that I try to do, which is a little bit similar, but maybe not quite as the same, is when we have our monthly people leader meeting. In many ways, we spend about a third of the time talking about things that aren't relevant to necessarily work, but we're
Hmm.
trying to figure
Yeah.
out different ways of connecting. So
Good.
whether it's celebrating individual accomplishments, we tend to go around and tell and share what people are feeling good about,
Hmm.
whether it's their work. We do a fair amount of verbal recognition. We start off every meeting,
Nice.
whether it's our town hall or whether it's a monthly meeting, with our high fives and shout outs. So
Hmm.
we spend probably anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes open session of our folks basically recognizing their colleagues about job well done or
Nice.
contributions. So it's not going all the way quite to the
Hmm.
point where we're having an opportunity to do something a little bit less work related. But I definitely agree with you. There's value in creating those personal
Hmm.
connections in some way. And we'll continue to try and figure out new ways. And like the ones you said, I think we'll definitely consider those.
Good. Well, now as we wrap up, I'm glad that it was helpful. As we wrap up, what do you think will be the future of flexibility at your company and more broadly?
I think for us, I think more structure around the flexibility. I don't think
Hmm.
flexibility is going to go away. However, I think what our managers and our people leaders need from them is more structure and guidance about what's
Hmm.
appropriate and what are the rules and guidelines. We've
Hmm.
taken an approach of being very hands off and being very deferential to the lowest team leader as far as figuring out what is the right approach in determining what the work
Hmm.
arrangements are. What that's done is that's created some inconsistency within close proximity of one team to
Hmm.
another. And that inconsistency has created some discontent or potentially disengagement, not to the point where it's disruptive, but it's something that we want to try to avoid. And so, by creating more structure and guidelines around different types of approaches based upon certain circumstances, what it'll do is it'll provide a better framework, but still have the flexibility. I think our world is still continuing to evolve as we go forward, considering that we have a culture that's really built outside in from our yards and our branches, where the bulk of our employees are, inward to our administrative sites. We have to be sensitive to the fact that having multiple different types of arrangements, we want to make sure that they aren't disruptive to the whole, but at the same time are tailored to what the individual needs are. So there's lots of interesting things for us to consider, and I'm really looking forward to what we figure out in 2025.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Drew. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise. That was very helpful.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show and helps us improve the show. And if you have any questions, as always, email me at gleb, Gleb, at disasteravoidanceexperts.com.